What we're doing today is doing a town hall live event. It's a part of a series that we're doing. The tag has already addressed the force a couple of weeks ago, and now we're doing a town hall where we've opened up survey, and we wanted to get the issues and talk about and start the discussion about things that are affecting the Guard family. So today's events are going to go in generally this order. We're going to start off with opening with a prayer. The JAG will come up and address some events that we've seen throughout our force that seem to be an issue. Then we'll go into the discussion with the tag. After we do that, we're going to do 10 minutes of question and answers. So without further ado, we'll start off with the prayer. Chaplain.
Good afternoon. If you're a praying person, please pray with me. Gracious Lord, we thank you for this day, and I thank you for this organization, the South Carolina Military Department. Lord, I just pray that this town hall be one that's fruitful, one that brings up issues, and one that answers questions. So, Lord, I just invite you to be here, and may what we do and what we say bring you honor, praise, and glory. And I pray these things in your mighty and precious name, Lord. Amen.
And again, we talked about what this is we've coined it as a Guarding Our Health. And that's an initiative that has been put forth by the leadership to really address issues such as social problems that we're seeing in our society as well as in our force. This is not the end. It's not a one shot, one kill, and then we move on to something different. We know that we have to have the discussion, and sometimes those discussions are going to be difficult. And what we're planning to do is have other discussions after this. It's an ongoing program that is not, we're not going to end it. And we're going to have, we'll have General Jones talking with General Jenkins. They're going to have difficult discussions about growing up, where they're from. We're also going to have our service members, our employees, we're going to have state employees, air guardsmen, people from the force to talk about things that are affecting them. Because we know that we've got to have those difficult discussions. We've got to talk about it, because if we don't, then it's just going to continue to become a problem. So without further ado, the JAG is going to come up, Major Cummings, and address a couple of issues, and then we'll get into the actual discussion.
Thank you, Major Brown, and thank you, General McCarty, for giving me the opportunity to address a few issues. You know, the JAG always has to be the heavy in these situations, but what I like to think is that I'm kind of setting everybody up for success. So part of the reason I'm speaking today is to sort of give you some information about some of the rules that are in place that can kind of keep everybody out of trouble. That's sort of one of the things I want to get across today. I'm going to talk about a few different issues. One's going to be political activities, which can be kind of a minefield for our organization, because obviously we are not a political organization. That's not the purpose of the military. We're apolitical for all intents and purposes, and there are rules that are out there that sort of set us up for success so we can stay out of trouble when it comes to maintaining an apolitical status. The second, I'm going to talk about social media, which has been an issue that has popped up recently. Some of these social media posts are getting folks into trouble. We're going to get into that. And then I'm going to finish up with what happens whenever we do have these allegations of misconduct, how that process plays out. So I'm going to start with a general comment, something I get that you're going to zone me out probably in about 30 seconds. So I'm going to give you one piece of information, one piece of guidance that I think is the golden piece I can give you, and it keeps you out of trouble. Don't do stuff in uniform. If you remember that, you're in good shape. Don't show up at political activities in uniform. Don't go to protests in uniform, because what does that convey? If you show up in uniform, it appears that the U.S. military, the South Carolina National Guard, is supporting whatever that particular issue is. So if you remember that one piece, you're in pretty good shape. Now, feel free to zone out for the rest. I'm just kidding. Stay focused. So here's some stuff that you absolutely can do. The Department of Defense has said this is fine to do, no big issue. If you want to have a yard sign at home to support a specific candidate, that's fine. If you want to have a bumper sticker, if you were to go out in the parking lot right now, you're going to see bumper stickers that support specific candidates. That's fine as well, not an issue. If you want to contribute to a campaign, that is also fine, but you're not going to identify yourself as a sponsor of the campaign, because that looks like then the National Guard is supporting whoever that candidate might be. So that's why that you have that caveat there. So those are the stuff you can do. Let's jump into what you can't do and what's going to keep you out of trouble. So you're not going to endorse a specific candidate. And why is that? Because it goes back to my original point that we're an apolitical organization. And that if it appears that the South Carolina National Guard is supporting a candidate, you're crossing that line. So you want to avoid that. You want to avoid pictures of yourself with some specific candidate for that same reason. You're not going to attend political activities in uniform. That goes back to my original point. Always remember, if you do stuff in uniform, it's going to be an immediate red flag and you might be crossing a line, which is what we try to avoid. You're not going to use federal equipment for political purposes. So you're not going to be campaigning for some specific person using federal equipment. That's crossing an ethical line. It's once again making us a political organization, which is what we try to avoid. And never ever use your military position to endorse some specific candidate. That's an absolute crossing the line. You don't do that. And don't use your military position to try to convince a subordinate to support some candidate. These all should be kind of common sense issues, but you'd be surprised. They come up every year. That's why we have to continue to do these briefings. But these are the kind of the big rules that you need to follow going forward. So that's my political activities spiel. So let's go into social media. Social media is something that's getting folks into trouble on a fairly regular basis. The basic concept is, once again, you don't want to ever convey through social media that the South Carolina National Guard is taking a position on some specific social issue or political issue. That's what you try to avoid. If you have pictures of yourself on social media where you're doing, HUA Army stuff, and all of a sudden right next to it is some comment about a political issue, and then it appears that the South Carolina National Guard may support that same position, and that's what we try to avoid. I mentioned earlier that a lot of this is tied to your duty status. So all those rules I just talked about really just apply when you're in a duty status like AT, IDT, if you're on ADOS, if you're AGR, all of those rules are going to apply. Social media rules also apply potentially when you're not even in a duty status. So if you post something that may cross a line, we might still be able to take an adverse action against you because it violates an Army regulation. The example I'll use is like AR 600-20 talks about equal opportunity. It kind of lays out what the rules are when you're talking about that stuff. If you were to post something that's obviously sexist or obviously racist, that's crossing a line and could result in an adverse action taken against you on your comment. So that's something you're going to want to avoid when you're doing social media comments. I talked to the PAO earlier, and the basic guidance I got, and it makes good sense, is think before you post. Not rocket science, right? If you're hesitating for a second about posting something, maybe you shouldn't post it. And that's why we have folks like JAGs out there to give you guidance on whether you're crossing a line. Just take a beat, get with us, we'll give you an answer on whether or not what you're posting is appropriate or crossing a line, and it will keep you out of trouble. The other indication I got from the PAO is, hey, one post can have serious impacts on your entire career. That's absolutely true. One click of the button and all of a sudden you're crossing a line, you're violating regulation, and you're forcing the agency to then make a decision about whether or not your career should go forward, whether or not there should be some negative impact on your career. It's serious business and should be taken as such. And finally, I'm going to talk about what happens when there are these allegations that something has happened out there, some kind of misconduct, some line that might have been crossed. And it's investigations. It's something the Army does all the time. There's a specific regulation out there. It's AR 15-6, if you're interested in doing a little light reading. Basically, it just says commanders have this authority. If they think there's been misconduct out there, they're going to appoint an investigating officer who's going to go out and gather the facts, get some sworn statements, whatever the facts might be, whatever evidence is necessary to prove or disprove those allegations, bring that to the commander with recommendations, and then an action is taken. It's kind of funny, we call them informal investigations, but I can assure you these investigations are relatively formal. It's a long process, or potentially can be a long process, because all of the rights have to be protected, right? The rights of alleged victims have to be protected. The rights of alleged perpetrators have to be protected. And that's why we have these processes in place. We follow those processes so everyone's rights are protected. And it's very laid out there, right? The Army is great at processes. It's what we do. But they can be long and sometimes arduous, but it's to get to the right result. It's to ensure we get a fair and equitable result for all parties involved. And potentially after that, some action can be taken. But that's basically the way alleged misconduct plays out. So I'll just leave you with this one final thought. Please remember these rules. The reason I ask that is because when misconduct occurs, it increases my workload in my office. So my preference is you don't engage in misconduct, so I have lower work. That's my final thought. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the facilitator, Chaplain Denny.
Thank you, Major Cummings. I appreciate that. General McCarty, thank you for being here with us today. And the questions that I'm going to ask of you were things that we had received in via the Survey Monkey. And they're basically general themes, not specifically specific questions, but just the themes that came from that. And from those themes, I put together some questions. And as you know, sir, we are a family, a Guard family, and as Major Brown alluded to, sometimes with family, you need to have some tough conversations. And so hopefully, as Major Brown pointed out, this is the start of some of those tough conversations, so as we can continue to grow as a family. So the first thing I want to talk about is career progression and promotion. That seems to be a hot button for a lot of people. And the first question is that the promotion process should be a relatively straightforward one, or it seems to be. But there are nuances that cloud that process. Can you talk a little about how the point system works in the OML to ensure promotion fairness, especially within the enlisted ranks?
Well, first of all, take that one, or just speak loud.
And I'll work on it.
Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome, all right, for any of those that were asleep, you're now awake. First of all, I'd like to welcome you here today to the Bluff Road Armory, for those that are here in person, and then for those that are connected in some way else. Appreciate your interest and willingness to give of your time to be a part of this today. Just before I came over here, had several people come up to me and say, good luck, and then they paused and said, don't talk too long. I think they use that opportunity to stress the don't talk too long. But on the good luck piece, I see this as a great opportunity. You know, when we have issues, when we have concerns, when we have challenges, and had a commander one time, he would eat you alive for coming in and saying you had a problem. You had a challenge or you had an opportunity. You had a challenge and you had an opportunity to make a situation better. And I would like to frame the issues and concerns that we have now as challenges, as an opportunities to make the organization better. And why would you be nervous? Why would you be uncomfortable? Why would you not feel like you can do so as part of an organization that we commonly say and call a family? Well, families do sometimes disagree. Families sometimes don't always see things in the same way. Families sometimes fuss, fight, whatever you want to call it. But families, when times get tough, come together, circle the wagons, find out how to fix things so we can move on with the end state of being a better organization as we move forward. In the history of this great nation, the history of this state, if you look at it, we have faced those challenges in the past. We have faced opportunities. And I believe we have incrementally made progress. It doesn't mean, though, at times we don't stumble and that we don't fall. But as soldiers, as airmen, as employees of this great agency and this organization, we know what that means. We got to get ourselves back up. We got to get back in the fight. And that's what I intend for this organization to do. And everything that I want to do is what I want it to do, but I've got to have you collectively helping to push those opportunities forward. And we'll talk about some issues here today. The first, as the chaplain identified, is promotions. Whether you're the youngest private in the organization or you're one of the more seasoned individuals, either in uniform or as one of our civilian employees, you have a right and a vested interest in your career. Whether you work here full-time or you're an M-Day soldier, this is part of your plan to provide for yourself, personally and professionally, and for your family. So we ought to have those career paths clearly laid out. We ought to have processes to promote and to hire that are very clearly defined and as transparent as they can possibly be. And that is the intent. That is what we want to do. And when we don't do it, or don't do it quite right, then we need to recognize that, stop, and go back and get it right. So when we have our NCO promotion list and we have our officer OMLs, there are processes in which we go to get that. Those processes should be based upon the merits of the individual themselves, their record. From an officer's perspective, NCO's perspective, your OERs, your NCOERs. From a civilian perspective, we use the EPMS system, but it is an evaluation process. To that, when you get your NCOER or OER or EPMS, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody what that reads. Your supervisor should be engaged with you throughout the year to develop you for a path of success. And that means sometimes they're going to tell you things that you're not maybe doing right and that you can improve upon. That's how we grow. But when we come to those OMLs and we look at the criteria, and those criteria are published and we look at it, we publish those. For officers, they are broken up into top few, promote ahead of peers, promote with peers, and the terminology is promote as necessary, as needed, selected as necessary. And you, as an officer, have the opportunity and the right to look at that and see where you stand, to give you an indication of where you compare against your peers. And we are always looking at how we can improve upon that process. There should be no guesswork in what you're being evaluated on, what you're being measured against. Much of this we own ourselves. Your APFT, your height, weight, your education, both military and civilian. We've had deployments on there for quite a while. We need to start pulling back from that some because we're not deploying at the rate that we were at one time. But we all look at key developmental assignments. But none of that should be a surprise to any officer. And likewise with the NCOs, those processes that are looked at, those promotion lists, and I think I saw on the blackboard going out the door there, the promotion list for E6s, E7s, and maybe it was, I can't remember if it was E5s or E8s going out the door. Those should be accessible. Those should be available to you. Now, just because there are processes in place doesn't mean we always do it that way. And that's where, as an organization, that's where, as individuals, we've got to be willing to say, time out. We're not doing this right. Let's get it right. That type of philosophy should be inbred in us from day one in the service. Whether you're Army, Air, or civilian, when something's not right, we stop it. The classical example that we tend to use is safety on the range. If something's not right, everybody has not only the authority, but they have the obligation to say, stop, it's not safe. We need to have that same voice when it comes to processes and procedures. It is my intent for us to follow the regulations. It is my intent to follow the policies. And if we make an exception to it, then we make an exception based upon what is needed in the best interest of the organization. And it always should be measured about what is in the best interest of the organization. Now, Colonel Heaton, do you have any gaps you want to cover there? as it relates to that process that maybe I didn't go in deep as that we need to discuss it? Okay. And certainly we'll have an opportunity here in a moment if you want to come back and dive a little deeper into that. So appreciate that.
And so you had mentioned when you were just talking about a career path and having almost some mentorship through that process. So for those service members that really, I mean, within this organization, the first or second line supervisor should be the one that's providing that mentorship. But for whatever reason, if they're not receiving that mentorship or they're looking for more opportunities for mentorship, where would you suggest that they go or go about doing that?
Well, I would say first, and I put myself here as an example of it. I didn't get to where I am today on my merits alone. Now, there was a part of what I did in terms of my job performance, my work ethic, timing, but I also had individuals along the way, both in my military career and my civilian career, that took the time, the effort, and the interest in me to say, McCarty, you need to do this, or you need to do that, or you need to change the way you're handling certain aspects of how you carry yourself. And those people are like gold to you as you grow up in your career. Those are people that, unlike when you look in a mirror or when I look in a mirror and we ask ourselves, how do we look and how do we feel? We always get pretty much the same answer. I'm looking great, I'm feeling great, and everything's good. These are the people that will look at you in the eye and tell you when things aren't quite as rosy as you thought they were in terms of your own performance. You need that mentor, you need that coach. And it should be those first line supervisors that you work with as a start point. But if you're not getting it, I would encourage you to engage someone in the organization, Army, Air, Civilian, that you have respect for, trust in, and believe that they're going to help you to become the best soldier, the best airman, and the best employee that you can possibly be. And I want you to engage them, and I will be surprised, shocked, if they don't say, young man, young lady, I've been waiting for an opportunity to work with you, but I wanted you to have an interest in your career before I started putting my interest in your career on you. If you get told no, and it's easy sometimes to say no, isn't it, Major Cummings? JAGs, I think most of their testing in school is, what's the answer to this question? If it's any other answer than no, they get chastised for it. But if you get told no, don't let that be the end. Find a way to yes. It's your career. Go to someone else. And if you strike out, you come to me, you come to General Jones, you come to Colonel Ziegler, you come to Colonel Crumpton, you come to a Captain Coe, Colonel Dobson, the big man in the back that I still don't know how he gets into the hatch of a Black Hawk. You come to Colonel Settlemeyer and you say, would you help mentor me? Would you coach me? You will find somebody that maybe not in the COVID environment, but in other times will say, yeah, come on, let's talk. Now, I don't know for sure who I have mentored in my career, but I do know who mentored me. And there are people that today, I know without a doubt, I could call them and say, sir, ma'am, I've got something that I need your guidance on and your advice on. And they would stop pretty much anything they were doing and say, okay, let's talk. You need someone like that in your career. You need someone like that in your personal life. whether it's a spouse or a significant other. You've got to have somebody that you can have dialogue with, that you can balance your work and your professional life against to help keep you grounded. That's important. And if I could fix this by mandating a mentorship or a coaching program, I would do that. But my experience, that's not the way to do it. But I guarantee you, for everyone who wants to be mentored or coached, there's somebody willing to mentor and coach you. And they can help get you through the difficult processes. You may know where you want to go, but you've got to know how to get there. And I'm going to share just a little example, talked to it yesterday, a little bit of humor in it, a little bit of candor in it, but a lot of truth. Some of you may know Brigadier General Reginald Neal signed to the Georgia National Guard. He spoke at a JDAC conference several years ago, and he talked of an experience when he was a lieutenant. He went to his battalion commander, artillery officer, king of battle, who? He said, "Sir, what do I need to do to put myself in a position to have a successful career in the Georgia National Guard?" And his battalion commander looked at him and says, "Reggie, you need to look like me." And they both kind of laughed and said, as Reggie said, "Sir, it's going to be hard for me to look like a graying, white-haired individual, male." After they exchanged their laugh, they said, "I understand that, but what I mean," and he knew what he meant, "your portfolio, your career packet needs to look like mine in the sense of these are the assignments. These are the things that you need to do in your career to make yourself competitive." As a young lieutenant, as a young NCO, you may know where you want to go, but you may not know exactly how to get there. And I will tell you, whether you're an artillery officer, an aviator, or whatever other MOS, Army, Air, or in a civilian world, there are certain paths that help you get there. And they generally mean some very difficult and trying assignments, tough assignments. And it sometimes puts you working in situations where you're giving more of your time than you're being compensated for. But those are the type things that help you become competitive in your career. And you don't necessarily know that without somebody explaining that to you and helping you get there. Got enough there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. And also, I've heard you say this as well, not just seek out mentorship, but also look to be a mentor. You can learn just as much from being a mentor as you can from being a mentee.
I certainly agree.
Yeah.
You should be a lifelong career learner. You should always be trying to improve yourself. And part of that from a more seasoned individual is talking to younger soldiers and getting a perspective of things that are different from how you see the world. Because my upbringing, my background puts me seeing things significantly different than the young soldiers, the young airmen, and the young employees that we have today. Somebody's got to help keep me grounded in that capacity.
And that segues perfectly into this next question I've got for you, sir. It's perspective and seeing things differently. And over the past 15 years as an organization, we've made some great strides in having barrier busters come through our organization. A barrier buster is that person of diversity that's risen through the ranks to do great things in leadership. People like Brigadier General Marie Goff, Command Sergeant Major Jewel McCullough, CW5 Jan Reddy, Colonel Stephanie Batten, who is the first female to fly a helicopter for us, Colonel Renita Berry, Brigadier General Jenkins, Brigadier General Elam, to name just a few. So how can we continue to raise up barrier busters within this organization?
Well, first, those individuals you listed are certainly worthy of having been identified, but there are others. We've got Ms. LaToya Reed here, our current director of our Youth Challenge Academy, Mr. Derek Pugh, the deputy director, and we've got others in this organization that have succeeded in tough areas to succeed in, and I would not want to in any way diminish their success by in some way marginalizing their accomplishments by way of their gender, of their race. They did it the old-fashioned way. They did it by hard work. They did it by dedication. They did it by a commitment to themselves personally and professionally that they were going to be the best that they can be. But some of them that you mentioned, I've had an opportunity to talk with some of those here recently. Shortly after we had a very unfortunate social media posting, Brigadier General retired now, Cal Elam, Air Guard, Brigadier General called and said, understand we've got some situation going on, and just want to tell you that the South Carolina National Guard that I was a part of is better than that. And he said, and he had a lengthy career, and he had seen a lot. He said, we have had challenging times. And he, as I said just a moment ago, is confident that we can work through those challenging times and come out on higher ground than where we were before. But those individuals worked hard. They had a plan about where they wanted their career to go. They competed against some of the best in their particular discipline, and they competed and were successful at a very high rank, at a high level. I don't know that you can say anything else other than they probably did much of the same thing I just talked of. They had a vision or a plan of where they wanted to go. They sought out mentors. They sought out tough assignments. And truth be known, they were probably told no on more than one occasion. No, you did not get that promotion. No, you did not get that job. No, you're just not going to be good enough to get to where you want to go. But I would say, like them, like other successful people, that only inspired them to work harder, to persevere more, and to be willing to deal with a little bit more in terms of adversity. If it's worth doing, it's probably going to be hard to do it. But they made the commitment to make it happen. And they probably took a little ridicule along the way, comments under the breath at the water cooler, but they were focused on doing the right thing for the right reason. My hat's off to them and to others that you did not name for being successful, maybe in times of when the organization wasn't as hopefully as we want it to be today, as accommodating to allow success.
Right. Go ahead. Yeah, thank you, sir. And diversity, as we talk about it, it's one of our greatest assets. As you look across our organization, we literally have people from every corner of the state that work for this organization, which is a great thing. But with great diversity comes some great bias at times, which can cause tension in the workplace. How do we bring mutual understanding, maybe not necessarily mutual agreement, but mutual understanding in a diverse workplace?
Okay. My wife fusses at me a lot, most of it very deservingly so, about me watching some things that I watch on TV. I have an interest in watching the show Forged in Fire. I like knives, always have, and I like watching them make knives. But I don't really know anything about it. But as I watched it over the years, I learned some things that go into making knives that I think are somewhat applicable to making successful careers, making successful people. That putting it under fire, getting it hot, mixing in other metals, the diversity of, actually strengthens the steel versus it just being steel. The alloys and the mixing of metals under heat, under fire, under pressure actually creates a knife that's more durable, it's sharper, it's more serviceable, it's more likely to sustain a period of time in the process in which it's made. So if you take anything from that, you look at our organization, just kind of look around you now, we are diverse. We do come from different backgrounds. We do have different experiences as how we were raised. A few years ago with Colonel Heaton's, at his invitation, I went up to Clarks Hill and spoke with, when I was the DAG, spoke with the recruiters. As a little bit of perspective, I gave my background, a little bit about my family, a little bit about how I was raised, and at the end, several of the recruiters raised their hand and said, "Sir, no disrespect, but what you just described is not, in most cases, the young men and women that we're looking to recruit today." Things change. Perspective on life changes. Backgrounds change. Societal issues do change. But the soldiers, airmen, and employees that make up this agency, this organization, do come from different backgrounds, different perspectives. They bring unique skills to us, skills that they may have gained in their civilian world, through their education, or just life experiences on the street. And I'll tell you right now, may owe my life to it, but the young soldiers that I deployed to in Iraq back in 2004, 2005, maybe not all of them had the education and background that I did, but they could read the people and they could read the streets of Iraq very, very well. And they saw things that I never could see. They were able to perceive things that I never could quite sense. It was the way you survived on the streets. But when you've got people that bring you different perspectives than what you have, there's going to be times that we're not going to agree. There's going to be times that your way of looking at it is going to be different than mine. What we have to find a way, though, is to accept that sometimes, as they say, we've got to agree to disagree. But there is a difference between having a thought and an opinion on something that you can have civil discussion on than doing something that's just out and out wrong. It's a focused comment. It's a focused action that, whether it was intended to be taken that way or not, it does hurt people. And when that happens, as an organization, we've got to be willing once again to say, stop, this is not right. And we've got to be willing to do the hard things and calling it what it is. I am an advocate and have always have been of trying to address issues at the lowest level that you can reasonably and appropriately handle it. And my experience shows that solutions at the local level generally are the best because they get at the issue straight at it. They usually are most timely because they're right there with the problem or the issue, and that the affected group all can come together and say, Roger, we got it, let's fix it and move on. But if that's not the case then, or if it's not appropriate for it to be handled that way, it does need to be pushed up. Pushed up, not pushed under. Pushing it under the rug doesn't solve the problem. Thinking that it'll go away doesn't solve the problem. We have got to be willing to address the tough issues. And I can assure you of this, that you're not always going to agree with the answer. And a lot of what I deal with day in and day out, both in my civilian career before I retired and what I deal with here now, it's based on an investigation. It's based upon an individual being tasked with the responsibility to seek out the facts. And when you have a situation that there are maybe multiple witnesses to, or there is a trail of records to help lead you to a finding, that's usually pretty clean. Where we struggle is when there's a incident that's a one-on-one, where it's he said, she said, she said. But we do have processes that we still try to get at what the truth is. And when we find the truth, we try to be as fair and evenly as we can in trying to find a right solution to the issue so that as an organization, we can move on. Now, as a DNR employee for years, a friend of mine shared with me one time, he was our internal affairs guy. I can tell you about being the internal affairs guy. Pretty much everybody in the organization doesn't like you. Until you do something in an investigation that clears them of something that was probably going to end their career, nobody likes them. And I asked him, I said, John, how do you deal with that? He said, I grew up hunting and fishing, and he's always, on the worst of days out on the lake, I always admired a duck. The worse the weather got, the colder it got, the more it rained, the happier the duck seemed. He said, so when things get tough and things get difficult around, he said, I just be a duck. He said, I let it roll off my back and I move on. I never let someone else get joy or fulfillment out of thinking they've done something to hurt me. Be a duck, drive on. But sometimes, though, we got to call it what it is, and we got to do what's right. And that's going to sometimes challenge the organization. But I do believe that most people in this organization or in any other I've ever been a part of are in it for the right reasons. You don't sign a blank check as a soldier or as an airman, and you don't work as a state employee in any capacity for the salary. You do it because you have a calling. You see this as a calling. This is a love of what you want to do in your professional career. We have to do the right things, and sometimes it challenges us, and it sometimes causes pain, but we can get through it and we can get better. I have to believe that, because that's kind of how I've been for the last 30 years in my professional career. You can get through issues and you can get better.
Yeah, and just to use that duck reference, the duck's constantly paddling, constantly going. It's not just sitting still. So, yeah, great words. Thank you.
He's moving.
He's moving. He's moving it. And just as we wrap up the diversity section and move into some COVID questions we have, I just want to remind us of the JDEC that we have, which is the Joint Diversity Executive Council, along with the SEP, which is the Special Emphasis Programs. And if you have any questions on those or how to get involved, Lieutenant Colonel Settlemeyer or Captain Thompson are great resources for that as well. So if you have any questions on that, please feel free to see them.
And I would also, I'm very encouraged about the Sergeant Major's new Junior Enlisted Council. It could be that some of our more seniored individuals in the organization don't necessarily like that. As a young lieutenant, reported to my unit in Georgetown, went for several years to AT when we had middle weekends. Then they came up and changed the middle weekend. When you went to the field on Sunday morning, you stayed out for, I think, 9 nights, and then you came back in, and then you closed out and you went home. That didn't bother the young soldiers. They liked getting in and getting the job done. You know who it bothered? The senior ones that liked going to the 204 and outside of Fort Stewart to have a middle weekend. Change can be good. change can be good for an organization.
Absolutely. Thank you. And also on the state side, we have Mr. Robert Falk as well. So if you have any programs that you may want to introduce on the state side or talk about, please see Mr. Falk with that. And in the last couple of minutes we have, sir, for COVID, as you're aware from sitting with the governor, South Carolina continues to spike and our cases continue to grow. And as we're, as a Guard, looking to find our steady state and get back to AT and drills, what reassurances can service members and family members have of when they show up to fulfill their duties that they're going to be safe?
All right, from the very beginning, Secretary of Defense, Secretary Esper put out priorities in his guidance. 3 things. First was to protect the force, protect our people, both our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and their families. Second, to maintain mission and readiness. And third was to support an intergovernmental whole nation approach to getting at the COVID pandemic. We have used that as a driving point for looking at how we will engage the workforce. We have balanced that against CDC, the Center for Disease and Control, DHEC, NGB, and other DOD guidance to look at how we were going to frame the workforce. In addition to having a varied workforce in terms of gender, racial, and other diversity, we've also got a very diverse workforce in terms of where the employees work. AGRs, federal technicians, state employees, contractors, volunteers, and I think we probably have a couple other categories. All of them have different rules that we have to work by. Our number one priority is always to maintain mission capability, but we balance that with taking care of our people. Now, we have done things that we believe helped us balance that over the last 100+ days. We have done a pretty successful approach to working telecommuting. We have brought in workers and had split type shifts. We've had workers that could not work from home, could not telecommute. We could not come in and do the proper social distancing, and they have been, from a certain perspective, excused from not being at work, and that's to the federal employees. And we will continue to measure how we go forward in bringing the workforce back based upon the guidance of organizations like the CDC, DHEC, NGB, and other DOD guidance. We're not going to jeopardize the force any more than what is necessary to maintain readiness. And why do we have to maintain readiness? Well, it goes without saying, we currently have soldiers and airmen who are deployed in the warfight. We just fortunately got back Bravo 1908 on U.S. soil this week. We got back the 751st CSSB. We got back some of our airmen. We got the torch party, advance party of the 4th of the 118th back, but we still have soldiers deployed. We just deployed the 678th ADA Brigade. We've got other units that have been NOSed or being considered for NOS. The beast has to be fed. But we've got to do so in a way that we can protect the workforce for the next event that we've got to support. Also, as we have worked to support the current COVID operation, we today still have about 500 soldiers who have been brought up on orders that are working each and every day, helping the state get through some very challenging times. Talked with the director of DHEC at the governor's brief this morning. He said we could not do what we're doing in rural testing without the Guard. Y'all are the backbone of getting the event set up, staged, and run. We couldn't do it without you. We've got soldiers in 3 of our prisons helping to provide medical support. We've got other applications of uniformed personnel working to support this fight. We are going to, though, continue in a phased approach, and the state is using a tiered approach similar to what the federal government's doing, and we will try to keep them as in balance as we possibly can with measuring readiness on taking care of the force. Certain things we're going to put a priority on. If you are in a high category of risk due to age, and we know that COVID is more problematic to older populace, if you have pre-existing medical conditions, those are going to be considered. Daycare is a challenge. Not all daycare centers are open. So families that have children, we got to work with that. We're going to address things as much as we can across the board. But supervisors in all levels, in every component, have to make calls based on guidance given by the G1 and the J1 and by Mr. Falk in Human Affairs, HR, that will allow us to protect the force and get the job done. We are part of the organization that when things get rough, whether it's a hurricane, tornadoes, floods, that people say things are going to be better because the Guard is here. That's part of why we exist. It's not, again, going to be easy because it's going to make us have to make some tough decisions. But that's what we get paid to do, make tough decisions. But we have done great things during these constrained times. I want to just point out a couple of those. Our MedCom has come up with some very creative solutions that are helping us get at going in and working to decontaminate facilities. They have put up these strike teams to be able to go out and do medical testing, support that. Colonel Batten, Colonel Latham, and all the MedCom folks have really leaned forward, working with DHEC and the private sector and the public hospitals and ensuring that we are putting the best foot forward with this. Our aviation, both Army and Air, have maintained their critical services. Our Air Guard has maintained that ACA mission nonstop. That means you got to have pilots, crews, maintainers, everything. Army Aviation, we supported now 5, I believe, heart flights as recently as this weekend, where we effectively brought a victim off the side of a mountain that was going to otherwise spend the night up there. Don't know what the conditions would have been if he hadn't been brought off that night. We have done great things where we focus our efforts. We're down now, I think, to 0 flippals. We're getting ready to get at excess property. We need to be focused on what we can do in small groups, how we can be successful. Our youth challenge sent all the cadets home. NGB said, if you believe you can bring them back and salvage the cycle, do so. That staff worked around the clock to set the conditions for success to bring back cadets who had already started the program so they could finish youth challenge and job challenge. And folks, that's like going to basic training. If you'd gone halfway through basic training and somebody had told you, you're going to have to go home and come back and start over, that wouldn't have been something you'd have been happy to have to do. That staff worked and really busted it to bring those cadets back. We didn't get them all back for various reasons, but the job challenge folks got their certificates. The youth challenge are going to get theirs with a couple exceptions, and we're still working that. That's the kind of employees that we have here. That's the kind of people that dedicate and go above and beyond. That's why I'm confident that whatever issues we've got, we can address them head on, looking at each other eye to eye, and saying we may not always get along, but we can be friendly to each other, we can be cordial to each other, and we can professionally work together to accomplish good things. I think I got off track a little bit, so you may have to bring me back.
I don't know if I can, sir. So that pretty much concludes the questions that I had, and we have a couple minutes to field some questions from the audience. And these are not plants, I assure you. They're not plants. But understand that if you ask a question that's already somewhat been addressed, we will table that for another time, and we'll dig down into that in one of our video series that we have coming up. So if I say that hey, we're going to table that, please don't be offended. Know that I love you, and that's a pertinent, valid point that you're bringing up. We just don't want to duplicate effort.
And I would want to say, so if you do, we're going to take this time to do questions from the audience. If you have questions or comments or concerns, please come up to the mic. Don't touch the mic because we got two mics working here. Also, you will be turned towards the camera when you address your concern or anything like that. It's not disrespect. It's just so that we can ask it into the camera. That's what's being recorded. I will also say that a lot of you probably just received emails from someone saying that, or text that they couldn't hear or they couldn't see the video. We had the internet drop out. So the backup was the recording. So we're going to, of course, we'll continue to record. We'll continue to go through it, and we'll send out the video. So without any further ado, is there anyone who has any questions from the audience?
And don't be bashful.
Yes, sir, we've got a question right there, sir.
Yes, sir, young man.
And please state your name as well.
Hello, everybody. How y'all doing? I'm Sergeant Johnson. I'm in 741st Quartermaster Battalion. I've been in the service for about almost 11 years now. I think the comments that were made in reference to it was a racial slur that I read on the internet, and I think my biggest question a month later is what do we do to get past it? It's been an issue that's been brewing in the National Guard as long as I've been in, and I'm tired. I think everybody knows what's going on outside. It means of what's happening in the news, what's happening in the real world, and I want to believe that this organization is strong enough for us to get past it and for us to put it behind us and ultimately make it a part of the policy where it's not just a policy that you can't do that, you can't say certain things, but let's teach these people to get past it. Some people are racist because they don't know any better. Some people are racist because they're ignorant. But we can start at unit levels to get past that, and it won't be a thing anymore. You know, some people are going to just not like people of other color, and I'm not just talking about white and black. I'm not talking about black and white. I'm talking about Indians. I'm talking about Mexicans, any other ethnicity in the National Guard. But we all represent the same organization. You know, we all represent the same organization, and I just want to believe that we can put it behind us. As a young black man in America, and as a seasoned veteran in the National Guard, I might be one of the younger guys here, but I like to believe that we can that we can get past it, that we can put it behind us, and that we can effectively grow from what we've experienced. I didn't like it. It didn't make me feel proud to be a National Guard soldier. I spoke with a lot of the leaders sitting in this room right now, and I spoke on how I felt, you know. But it wasn't a good feeling, and I want to believe that we can put it behind us. So my main question is, what do we do now? You know, because I would love for us to get to a place where you know, every commander in every unit in the National Guard would just have a sit-down conversation with their soldiers. Take your hat off, take your rank off, and just talk. And you will understand, even if you're racist. My honest belief is that you will realize you got a lot more in common with your soldiers than what you think you do. And ultimately, it'll grow your relationship with that particular soldier. And now you got somebody that'll run through a brick wall for you if you build that relationship, if you're willing to build the relationship. So I would love for us to get to a place as an organization that we could implement racism into the policy, into the practice of the National Guard. You know, it's up there with sharp. You got drug abuse. You got all these different things that we talk about, but we don't talk about racism. We don't talk about like everybody kind of brushed this. In my opinion, I viewed it was brushed to the side initially. You know, I made some comments on Facebook, and I'm not sure if everybody knows about it. Don't really matter. Ultimately, I was frustrated. I'm frustrated, still frustrated, but I want us to get past it. I want to retire at 20 years, and I want everybody that looks like me and everybody that wears that patch right now today. I want us to have that same conversation in 10, 20 years that you successfully completed your career. You know, racism in the National Guard, I've dealt with it directly and indirectly, and it's traumatizing. It's traumatizing and it's hurtful. And it don't make me feel good to be a South Carolina National Guardsman. I'm gonna be honest with y'all, but I do everything I can on my end to be a part of that change. I just want to know, what are we going to do as leaders, you know, to get to the next level. It means putting that behind us and growing from it. If we're as strong as I think we are, I feel like we can. And I feel like this is a start. I'm thankful. I was super excited once I realized what was going on today. I cleared my whole schedule. But I want us to get to the next level. And I appreciate every leader that has reached out to me to make sure I was good. In reference to the comments that I made about some comments that were said about somebody that looks like me, you know, that's a leader. You know, it's frustrating, and I really want us to get to the next level. But I believe in everybody, every leader. I want to challenge you, just like we're held to a standard as a enlisted soldier, whether you're a senior enlisted soldier or whether you're just a junior enlisted soldier. We're all held to a particular standard, and we're expected to keep up with that. It doesn't matter whether it's PT, whether it's anything related to you being well groomed, anything related to your career. We're held to a particular standard. I want to challenge every leader in here to go out and just get to know your soldiers. Everybody in here looks older than me. No offense. Everybody in here looks older than me.
Right.
You know, and I might be the youngest person in the room, but I want us to grow as leaders, and I want us to I don't want this to be a time for us to fall apart. The world is crazy right now, but we are strong as an organization that, as I think we are, we'll use this time to get better and to be able to grow as an organization.
That's right.
That's my honest opinion. God bless everybody. All right.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you so much for those comments and for your heart and for your perspective. And so you heard what he said, and he spoke from experience. He spoke from the heart, and you addressed some. But where do we go? I mean, what are the next steps? And some of what we're doing here with these Guard Your Health addresses that, but. It sounds like he's looking for something deeper as well, something more meaningful, sustainable.
Well, and we had a conversation in my office, a month or so ago, and what he said then mirrors what he said here today. And I don't question anything about what he said, and I don't question anything about things that I've read in investigations about how people were hurt. I don't. Does that mean I can perceive it from the same perspective? I can't, but I do believe this, that, and borrowing something I read on the bus of the Youth Challenge bus, if you can dream it, you can achieve it. I think if we can dream or believe that we can have a better world, we can have a better nation, we can have a better country, we can have a better organization, we can achieve it. But we've got to work to address the issues. And I think a start point is not just today. We can back up to when the events that have that brought us maybe to today took place, and certainly beyond. Part of it is sitting down and discussing. There's generally no better time and way to do it than, again, at the lowest level. Some of the best conversations that I ever had as a young lieutenant was on the gun line at night on a howitzer, sitting there talking with soldiers. You learn more about your people in that environment and what made them tick than you would have ever learned in anything else. One thing that this organization is struggling with today is we don't know our people like we used to. Good or bad, back in the day, and that term is way overused, but back in the day when I was a lieutenant in Andrews or a captain in Georgetown or a major in Sumter, when the first sergeant blew the whistle to dismiss drill, people just kind of mingled around. You could already smell the grill in Andrews cooking. They had something on. Chickens, they may have been shrimp, it may have been whatever. Somebody was cooking something. We were going to eat, they were going to play cards, they were going to play basketball, they were going to, and at the end, I was going to spend the night in the armory, and many a night I had to say, hey fellas, you don't have to go home. You just got to go somewhere else other than here, because I got to go to sleep. I can't stay up all night. But we have changed. Societally, people are not localized in their units anymore. And when that first sergeant blows the whistle and dismisses it, you better not be standing in front of the door. Everybody has a car. Everybody is going somewhere. But not knowing people, I think, is a huge contributor to some of our issues that we have today. Some of our behavioral health issues, we learn of a bad thing in a soldier's or an airman's life when something bad happens because we don't know them. We don't know that they lost their job or they had a relationship break up or they've had something traumatic to take place in their lives. Knowing people, knowing our employees, knowing our fellow soldiers, airmen, and understanding their backgrounds, understanding our differences, and then recognizing how much though we do have in common. And I've shared this many a time, I won't share it one more time. In Afghanistan and Iraq I didn't because my mission was different. But in Afghanistan I lived on a compound that the majority were Afghans. I went out each and every day to villages in Afghanistan and through an interpreter would talk to village elders, would talk to head of household. And socially, economically, from a religious standpoint, from a governmental standpoint, you could just list them off. We had very, very little in common on the surface. But when you sat down and looked eye to eye, you broke bread together, you found out that we really had a lot in common. More in common than we had differences. They wanted peace and safety for their family. I want peace and safety for my family. They wanted their kids to be healthy. They wanted them to have opportunities. I want my kids to be healthy. I want them to have opportunities. I want to give to them a better opportunity than I had. They did the same thing. Found out that we're human. We're different, but we are much the same. Let's try to find the common ground. Let's try to find the things that we can agree on. Let's try to find the things that mean something to us all that we can hold to and believe that it's worth working together for, and in many situations, worth fighting for, and for 16 of our soldiers, worth dying for when we took an oath and basically signed a blank check. I want to be a part of an organization that when I walk down the hall and I see a soldier, or I see an airman, or I see an employee, I see a brother or a sister in arms. I want to see people that I believe care as much about the organization as I do, and they care as much about me as I hopefully can care about them. I love to see, and it's some people I will seek out on a regular basis just to look at them smile. We've got some smilers in the organization, and I can tell you, it is a good thing for somebody to smile and have something cordial to say to you. And I know that these people don't always have everything in their life going well, but you're not going to let them see it. They're not going to let you see it. They're going to be uplifters. They're going to be the ones that are going to try to find something positive in the bad. They're going to be the ones that you can go lean on when times are really tough, regardless of what the rank issues are, regardless of the race or the sexual issues are. They're the ones you can go to and count on them being a rock. And we've got to have some rocks now. We've got to have some gems. Stand up, stand tall, and be counted. And if you get knocked down, get back up. If you get told no once, get back up. If you get told no twice, get back up. Find a yes to the no. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the organization. We owe it to our families. We owe it to the citizens of this great state and this great nation. And, oh, by the way, if you look with the issues that we do have, with the challenges that we do have, with the opportunities we do have, this nation still serves as a beacon to much of the world, as a place to want to go to, not to want to run from or leave. I believe in that. I believe in that dream. I want to be a part of us finding answers to those issues so that we can all succeed. 11 years of his life invested. 9 more to get to that mythical 20. Those are the best years of your life. You hope that you can be happy. You hope that you can be fulfilled personally and professionally. I said yesterday, I retired from DNR at 24 years. Depending on how the day goes, I may be gone from this organization at the end of the day. I hope not. But I can honestly say there has never been a day that I dreaded coming to work. There are tasks that I didn't particularly want to have to be a part of because they weren't fun. But I didn't dread coming to work. Adrian and I worked for an organization that they gave you a lot of freedom. They gave you a vehicle, they gave you a credit card, they gave you 1, 2, 3 boats, a 4-wheeler, and the decision-making authority of when you pull down the driveway and got to the road and can go left or right or straight ahead or put it in reverse and go back to the house because that's what you wanted to do that day. But as long as you got your job done, as long as you did what you're supposed to do, they let you do it. Now, I'm not saying we can do that here. Don't take that as that. But I work for a place that I love working to be a part of. I am here because I want to be here. I want you here because you want to be here. Not because I've got 18 years and I can't leave, or I've got 11 years and I can't leave. I want you here. I need you here. I need you to help these younger soldiers, younger airmen, younger employees understand that there are challenges, there are issues, there are problems in life as a whole. We find ways to deal with it, and we find ways to be successful, and we move on. Things that we can't control, there's no need to worry about it. We can work to try to resolve the things that we do have a way to address, and that's what we need to do. And I am committed, said it over in the auditorium several weeks ago, and I'm saying it here. I am committed to that, but I can't do it by myself. And I will say it one more time. If you, as an employee in any capacity in this organization, do not believe that in your good conscience, good faith, in whatever your beliefs are, that you can't work to make it a better place, and you can't be the kind of person that we need you to be, then you need to leave the organization. Find someplace else that will make you happy. We've got enough issues, opportunities, and challenges to do what we're supposed to do as soldiers, airmen, and employees, not to have to pull or drag people that don't want to come. Is it going to be perfect? No. Is it going to be easy? No. But like I said earlier, the harder things in life, the better things in life usually take work. So, thank you for being willing to come and meet with me. Thank you for being willing to come up and share your concerns today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And unfortunately, an hour goes quick. And so we're over that time that was allotted for this town hall. But again, understand we're going to have a series of videos and of conversations that are going to be coming out. This is not the end. This is just the beginning of the conversation. So if there's things that you want for us to peel the layers back and to go in more in depth on, please see Major Brown, see Tashir, see myself. We will hear that and we will address it and we will get the answers that you need.
Major Brown, I want to thank you and your Service Member and Family Care section for helping put this together. To the PAO and staff, thank you, and for all the others that helped make today a success in the fact that we came together to address issues. Did we fix anything? Maybe not, but we started a process. You don't run a 2-mile PT test by stepping over the start line. You got to go 2 miles to come back to the end line. We're starting a race. And it may not be a sprint, it could be a marathon. But if we stay focused, we can get there. The Service Member and Family Care Program, in a program that each and every day the employees, the few military, the rest civilians, and I see them sitting back there at their desk working, do great things for the soldiers, airmen, and civilian employees of this nation. They do it behind the scenes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you this. I didn't mention them a minute ago, but I do want us to say a special success and a special thanks to our funeral honors detail. When Shaw Air Force Base, when Fort Jackson said we can't do that, our funeral honors detail has continued to make it happen. They have gone out and been there to pay the final respects for servicemen and women of various services who paid some significant prices for us to be able to be here today. Some of those were close to us. Retired Brigadier General Tootin was the DAG Air Guard here recently passed. Colonel Pete Brooks recently passed. Staff Sergeant Ken Messick recently passed. We've lost 2 soldiers in the last 72 hours from what we believe are right now natural causes. The world continues in everything that we do, the good, the bad. And we've had people affecting the good side of it with our MedCom and other personnel, and we've had people that are affecting the more challenging and heartache side of it, and that is the loss of our brothers and sisters. But they've been there to honor them. Johnny, appreciate what your team has done. Appreciate you standing up, filling the gap. You're doing a great job. Thank you. Cool. And all of you probably served or at least know of him. Major General Spears, one of the former adjutant generals prior to General Livingston. is not doing well at all. The family has already called and working with our funeral honors folks to be prepared for his probably imminent passing. A man that served 40-plus years in the Guard, 16 years as the Adjutant General, gave his life to this organization. So if you could, and how you worship, if you would keep he and his family in your thoughts and prayers, and this whole organization in your thoughts and prayers. And we need that. We need that. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you all for coming. As we leave, I'm going to say a prayer over us, a benediction, a charge for us as we all leave. So if you're a praying person, once again, I please invite you to pray. Gracious Lord, we do thank you for this day, and thank you for this time and for the work that Major Brown and his team put in for this, because it's for the good of this organization. It's the spirit for this organization. And so, Lord, I just pray that through this process we grow better as a family. We grow more united as a Guard to better serve this state, to better serve this nation. So, Lord, help us. We may not be broken. We may have been bending some, but help us to be like that oak tree that's firmly rooted and is strong. So, Lord, I love you. I thank you for this organization that you've brought me to. And may this organization continue to thrive and grow through these struggles that we have. And I pray all this in your mighty and precious name, Lord. Amen.